Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Our Stoney Acres. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to harvest spaghetti squash. Super excited about this video. We've got a ton of spaghetti squash this year. We planted 2 big hills and I bet you we have 24 spaghetti squash out in the garden this year. So I'm excited to do this video, teach you guys when and how to harvest spaghetti squash, okay? Before we get started though, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that notification bell so you get notice every time I release new videos. And also, if you would, do me a favor, go over and follow us on Instagram. We're getting a pretty good following over there. It's a lot of fun because I'm able to go out and do some things in the stories and stuff like that. And so I would love to have you come follow us on Instagram as well. And so there's a link down in the description that you can click on to do that. Okay, so before, I'm actually going to take you and we're going to do some harvesting, talk about curing and things like that. But before we do that, I wanted to give you a couple of caveats, okay? First and foremost, one of the things that you really want to try to do is leave these guys in the garden for as long as you possibly can. So the longer they're in the garden, the more mature they're going to be and the longer they're going to last in storage. So we want to make sure that we get these guys nice and hard and the skin super solid. That's what's going to make them last for a long, long time. And you know, we've got, like I say, a couple of dozen squash this year. It's going to take a while for us to eat those up. So we want to leave them in the garden as long as you possibly can. Now, if you want to just eat one fresh like this one we're going to have for dinner tonight, then what I'm going to teach you is a great way to know that they're ready to harvest and you can eat them fresh. But the longer you can leave them in the garden, the better they're going to be in storage. So make sure that you leave them just as long as you can. But here's the caveat. You don't want them to get frozen, okay? So they're going to be maturing, you know, it's middle of September right now for us. We've got maybe a couple of weeks left until our first frost. And the thing that you don't want to have happen is you don't want them to get frozen. You don't want them to freeze out in the garden because that is really going to dramatically affect how long they're going to last in storage. So leave them in the garden as long as you possibly can. If you're ready to eat one, great, go ahead and eat them. But the ones that you want to store, you want to leave and let them mature for as long as you can in the garden before you harvest them, okay? So now let's go and we'll talk about actually harvesting these yummy spaghetti squash. All right, so let's talk about when we are going to actually be harvesting our spaghetti squash. And technically, these rules kind of apply to any of the winter squashes. So your butternut squashes, banana squash, you know, the Hubbard squashes, any of those are going to be pretty similar to this in your rules for when you're going to harvest, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your seed packet and figure out what your days to maturity are. Most spaghetti squash are going to mature somewhere between 90 to 110 days, but it varies based on your variety. So you definitely want to check that out first because, you know, if they're 110-day squash, don't even worry about it till we get to 110 days. They're going to be fine. And that's about 4 months. And so they're going to be, you know, in the garden for a long, long time, okay? Now, none of them are going to mature at the same time. If you look at our patch, we've got some that are ready to harvest, some that'll be ready in a week or so, and we've got several that I'm a little bit worried might not even make it before the first frost. So you're going to have kind of a wide variety, you know, because you're going to have flowers that have come all through the season. So let's talk about the rules. The first thing that is really going to give you a clue that your spaghetti squash is ready to harvest is there's going to be a dramatic color change, okay? So let's come down here and take a look at these squash. So first off, this one, totally not ready. This is what they're going to look like most of the season. So see how it's still green, almost white. It's got visible stripes to it. Definitely not even close, okay? These are right ready to go. So if you look at these, both of these are pretty close. This one more so than this one. See how this one still has some striping that you can see? And this one, the striping is pretty much gone, okay? So that's a good sign. Now I'm going to have the cameraman come up here and we're going to look really quick at this one over here. See how we're starting to get color in these, but not quite yet, okay? So those are not ready to go, but getting pretty close, okay? So now let's talk about the thumbnail test because this is really kind of the key. Okay, so here's the thumbnail test. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your nail and you're gonna try and press it into the skin of the squash. And if the squash is ready to harvest, your thumbnail is barely going to leave an impression. So come up here really close, and if you look, I'm just poking and nothing's happening, okay? The skin has gotten really hard, and you can see that it's not, my thumbnail's not going in. Now let's just back off and let's look at this one, which is not ready. If I put my thumbnail in it, I don't know if you guys can see that. See what happens? See how much softer it is? So you know that your squash is ready when it's super, super hard like that. The other thing is sometimes the squash will have a little bit of glossiness to it, and that glossiness will also go away. So if you look, these are kind of getting dull in color, and that glossiness will fade. So this guy is right ready to harvest. So here's what we're going to do. First off, you want to be using a good sharp pair of pruners or a knife or something like that. So when we actually cut these off, we want to leave about 3 or 4 inches of this stem here. And this one is a great example of that. We're just going to go ahead and cut this right here. And we want to leave that stem on because that will help with storage. So it's going to help it store longer and stay more stable for a longer time if we leave that on there. So that's it. It's that simple to harvest them. So really quick then, let's talk about storage. So the next thing that you want to do after you've harvested these is you're going to want to take all the ones that are ripe and that you've harvested inside somewhere like a garage or something like that, maybe a covered porch or patio, and you want to let them cure in hopefully 80 to 85 degree weather for 10 to 14 days. You're just going to let them sit there and they're going to cure, and that's going to kind of finish off the process and get them ready for storage. To store them after they've cured for that 10 to 14 days, we want to put them in some place as cool as we can possibly get it. If you can get it to about 50 to 55 degrees, that's ideal. So we're looking for a root cellar, a cool spot in your basement, or a cool spot in a garage or something like that. But we also don't want them to freeze, okay? So we don't want it to get much below that 50 degree mark. So you kind of, that's the place where they're going to last the longest. And sometimes people will get these squash to last all winter long and, you know, into next summer if you can store them properly. But you've got to hit that sweet spot of 50 to 55 degrees, okay? The one other rule that you want to make sure that you do when you're storing them is you don't stack them on top of each other. So they need to be stored side by side. Don't stack them on top of each other, because if one of them happens to go bad, it's going to spread. And so you want to make sure that they're not stacked on top of each other. So that is harvesting and curing. Okay guys, so hopefully you enjoyed that. We harvested a couple of these guys today, and we're going to use those to eat over the next few days. But like I said, we have just a ton left in the garden, and I'm going to try and leave those guys in as long as I possibly can. Again, remembering not to let them freeze before you do, before they get harvested. So that's all I have for you. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go over and follow us on Instagram as well. There's a link down in the description. Also, I would love to have you come join us in the Gardening Academy. The Gardening Academy is our monthly membership service where I provide several different pieces of content every month that are private and specific for our members. We do a mini course every month. We have a live Q&A session, several other things that we do throughout the month, and it's just an awesome way for you to learn how to garden. And it's fall. Moving into the winter is a great time for you to be able to spend some time getting some better gardening skills by learning in the Gardening Academy. So I would love to have you come and join us. There's a link down in the description. Click on that and you can come over and join us in the Gardening Academy this winter. It would be a great time to have you come and join so that you can become a better gardener over the winter for next year's garden. Okay, that, my friends, is all I have for this week. We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great week. Happy gardening.